What's this? I'm all alone? Don't adjust your screens. You are correct. I am all alone. But welcome to The Cup, the Currently Unnamed Podcast, where we put the real and the tea in reality, and you can always come to us first to quench your thirst. I'm David Healy. I don't have a cute intro, but I do have a cute shirt. I decided to wear my Cynthia Doll shirt today. Yes, it says hummus to the fungus. Her catchphrase, of course. I wore this because it was her birthday the other day. So I was like, that's a good time to wear her shirt. But I'm just drinking some water right now. Yep, there it is. You can't see it very well because I have scrunched my screen. I didn't want to take up the whole screen. I thought that would be weird. So I'm like, I'm just going to take up this little corner here. But yeah, you might be wondering, why is David alone? Let's just say it's been a very interesting week. As you know, there was a big election here in the United States, and I think it stressed out a lot of people, myself included. So I don't think everybody's in the best headspace currently to podcast. Am I in the best headspace to podcast? Probably not. But I really want to talk about this episode because it was a good one. So I'm going to do it. But first, there's a few things I need to get out of the way. So I didn't show it yet, but I do have a cup mug. Yes, cup mug. Woohoo. Panel full of cup mug. All one of us. But yeah, you can get a cup mug or any other merch at lonagcreations.etsy.com. We do ship internationally, so there are no excuses. But also, while you're here, please do me a favor. Please subscribe to this channel. We want to get our subscriber count up. We're getting there slowly but surely. But subscribe to this channel. Please like this video, especially if you don't like this video and it's just me, then I know it's because of me. Yeah, and that would be sad. So like this video, leave comments. I would appreciate comments. I want to feel like I'm having a conversation with somebody. So any thoughts you have throughout this podcast, please let me know. Also share this podcast with friends. That always helps. And yeah, I guess we can get into it. So I had a lot to say last week about the episode. It was not my favorite. In fact, I said I think it might be my least favorite episode of Dragula ever. Do I stand by that? I think I do. I think I do. The more I've thought about it, the more I'm just like, wow, there were so many things that just did not work for that episode. They're like, and the Boulets, I'll give them credit. They put out their podcast and they said, yeah, the musical was cringe, but that's the point. Like, I was living for it being cringe. People were laughing. Okay, well, that's one perspective to have. I I don't know if it's my kind of cringe. Like, I do like doses of cringe, but that was a little bit too much for me. Um, Plus there's a whole question mark of like, why'd they change their votes? And I don't think the Boulets really gave good answers for that. They were like, well, they basically said that they did it on their own. So I don't know. It's still a big mystery for me. But let's go ahead and get into the episode. Let me put up this banner first so you can see my social media down there. But yeah, so we get into the episode. Everybody comes back into the lab. Everybody except one person. Auntie does not come back to the lab with the group. And I get it for consistency because you always have the person who survives the extermination coming in last. But to me, I was like, well, they already know. Like, everybody was there when Vivi lost the extermination challenge. So there's not really the mystery aspect of it. And that's why the person comes in separately. So people can speculate. But what was there to speculate? But yeah, eventually Auntie comes in there, shocking everybody, I guess. Um, and people talk about the decision that they had to put somebody in the bottom two. And Aurora, I'll give Aurora props for this because she was really the one who spoke up and said, yeah, great. To be honest, I was strongly considering putting you in the bottom two. But my better judgment kicked in. Okay, your better judgment or production's better judgment? Who will know? And Gray seems a little bit annoyed by it, but I think Gray understands why, like because like that's a compliment, right? If somebody wants to take you out, that's the ultimate compliment in Dracula. Um, and then they talk a little bit about the winning team, and Asia says, "Hey, Jaharia, thank you for the choreo because I think without your choreo, we wouldn't have been the winning team." And I was like, "Oh, here we go. We're gonna get into Jaharia's leadership of it all." And yeah, they talk about it a little bit, and I don't think Jaharia went too hard with confronting Pi. And I was expecting like a big, like, how dare you moment. I think more of that comes a little bit later. Um, oh, and okay, I was wrong. Auntie hadn't come into the lab yet, but she does come in. She comes in and she was like just had the most horrible attitude at first, and it looked like she was about to go off on everybody. And in this moment, I was like, "Wow, what a sore loser here! What a sourpuss!" Like I was getting actively like really irritated with Auntie in this moment. Um, but then she's like, "I just want to thank you all for letting me do that extermination challenge." And I'm like, "Oh, okay. Well, you got me, gal." Because I really thought she was pissed. But she comes in seeming kind of happy that she got to lip sync and that she got to show off those skills to everybody. So, hey, props to her for having a good attitude about it all. Um, but not everybody thinks it was an amazing lip sync. Like I forget who it was. Somebody, oh yeah, it was Jaharia and Aurora. They both kind of throw shade like at the lip sync in the confessional, saying it wasn't that good, honestly. And even the Boulets said that on their podcast. They're like, yeah, it was kind of an underwhelming lip sync. And I don't know. I do think Auntie did well. I think Vivi was pretty underwhelming, but I've talked about that enough. Um, yeah, and then uh, Pi says that the reason that they voted for Auntie was to help her because she has a wall up, and Pi just really wants to help her break down that wall in the competition. Okay. If you say so, Pi. I don't know that Auntie was buying it. I definitely wasn't buying it. And Auntie says if she has a wall, it's because she doesn't want to. She doesn't want everyone to stab her in the back. And she says her baggage, like, she can't just, like, release her baggage for everybody in the competition because her baggage isn't just hers. And I was really curious what she meant by that. Like, are you talking about, like, baggage back home, or is there baggage in the competition that you don't wanna share because other people are involved in it? Uh, I don't know. Probably back home, but I guess, like, the dramatic TV watcher in me was like, "Ooh, who does this involve? Who's your baggage?" But I respect that. Like, not everybody has like the boundaries where they're willing to just open up about whatever stuff they're going through. Like, I don't always do that right away. I have to get to know you a little bit. Although I have have been a little bit too honest on this podcast at times. So um yeah, I definitely got where Auntie was coming from in this. But then they start to wonder what the Boulets meant about phase two. And this is something I didn't even really notice at first, when I watched the previous episode, that they had said like something about how they're going to enter into phase two of the competition. But then I saw like a YouTube clip of it, and I'm like, oh, I didn't notice that. What does that mean? Are the rules changing? Who knows, honestly, because they don't really change this episode. But yeah, people don't know what that means. And then we get Auntie saying that she thinks no one deserves to win this competition unless they've gone through an extermination challenge. And she specifically points out Asia. And Asia's like, "What are you talking about? I'm not the only one who hasn't been through an extermination challenge." And Auntie's like, "Yeah, but you have two wins." Um, Yeah, I don't buy that. Like, I don't think you need to go through an extermination. Like, did Neo? Did Neo go through an extermination challenge? I can't remember. Maybe she did. I'm trying to think if there's been any winners that didn't have to. I mean, Vander did, but it was like not for being low. It was just to test Vander. So I don't know. I really like, I mean, sure, but I don't think it's a requirement. So if you feel that way, Auntie, I don't think you would feel that way if you hadn't been through an extermination challenge. Um, but they also talk about like whether they should start like playing the game as a game or keep it fair. And Asia's like, everything's fair. Everything is on the table in this game. Like we're given free reign to do things in certain times, so it's fair. um, and Auntie's like, yeah, but is that what the fans want? Um, I think that's funny that she brought that up actually, because if you think about the last episode where Gray was almost in the bottom two, like, did the fans want Gray to go? No. But did we want to see the drama? Yes. Like, I'm happy Gray didn't, like, because honestly, if it had been Gray and Auntie, Gray would be going home. But yeah, I don't know. It would have been spicy. Like, that would have been really good TV. I don't know if it would have been enough to really make up for a rough episode, but yeah, I don't really agree with Auntie there. Like, I think that it's okay to lose a fan favorite at the sake of really good TV, and that would have been pretty dang good TV. Um, but anyways, they do have the announcements from the Boulets. They come on the screen, and they are announcing what the next challenge is. They have a monochrome monster challenge. Um, so I saw that that was the name of the episode, and I'm like, oh, everybody's assigned a specific color. But no, nobody's assigned a color. Everybody's assigned the lack of color. They have white, black, and every shade of gray. That's all they can do for the challenge. They have to create their own monsters, like new classic monsters. Which I actually really like this idea. Like, I grew up watching the old Universal classic horror films. Like, those are some of my favorites still. And I rewatched them actually back in 2022. I did a thing where I was watching old horror movies chronologically, starting from 1920 and going all the way up through the 1960s. And I watched like 100 and I think it was about 150 movies in that year, and it was really cool seeing the evolution of everything. So, like, they mentioned, like, Cabinet of Dr. Caligari, Nosferatu, Phantom of the Opera, all silent films from the 20s that I did watch a couple of years ago for the first time, and they all held up, honestly. I really liked I think my least favorite of the 3, surprisingly, was Nosferatu. But Cabinet of Dr. Caligari, super cool. Phantom of the Opera, wow. I was very impressed with that. Oh, by the way, the Boulets were talking about Lon Chaney, who was the Phantom in Phantom of the Opera, and they're like, "Oh, yeah, he's such a classic." Like, he did his own makeup, which is true. He was known as, like, the man of a thousand faces because he would do all these different character faces, like, he was the Hunchback of Notre Dame, but they're like, "He's the only person to play every Universal monster." That's wrong on multiple levels because, Lon Chaney was supposed to be the original Dracula before Bela Lugosi, but he died of he died he died of throat cancer, which my throat's ironically acting up right as I say that. Um, but yeah, he did not live long enough to play a universal monster. His son, however, Lon Chaney Jr., is very famous for being the Wolfman in the 1940s, and he did play in like some of the, like, random sequels for Universal movies. He did play, Son of Dracula, and he played, a Frankenstein, like a Frankenstein monster. So that's 3. That's not every Universal monster because there's more than 3. He played the 3 main ones, but it was his son. So 2 different people. with very similar names, Lon Chaney Sr. and Lon Chaney Jr. But enough of that tangent. So yes, they are tasked with making those monsters. So I thought that was really cool, and they have to do the silent script like with it too. So there's going to be like kind of the slides that say whatever's going on in their story. I'm like, I really like this aspect. Um, yeah, and but first they have a fright feat. So they have 30 minutes to create makeup using the same makeup kit as Lon Chaney, the same makeup kit that he had back in the day, which is really cool. Like, I mean, I don't know how similar it is to the makeup he used, but I believe it because he was like, if you look up some of his creatures that he made, it's very impressive. Like the Phantom of the Opera character he did, it is very iconic. Like if you Google Lon Chaney Phantom of the Opera and see that image, you'll be like, oh yeah, I've seen that. I've seen that. That's iconic. Um, but yeah, so they have all of these supplies and they have to quickly start working things. And I'm like, okay, this is Gray's challenge to lose. Um, so they all start working. They aren't getting the kind of makeup part on them right. So eventually they figure out, oh, it has to be wet. So they start collectively like spitting in their makeup, and I'm like, ooh, spit can smell bad. So I'm like, "Oh, I bet that room might have been a little stinky." But then Aurora, she figures out that they have a cold cream, and if you mix that in there, then that works best. And she tells somebody, I can't remember who, but I'm like, "Keep that to yourself, girl. Like that's a good secret to have." But they keep working. For me, as they showed everybody, the two that stood out to me as having the best makeup, I thought they were Gray and Auntie. I thought they looked the best. Some of them looked rough. I think Aurora looked bad, which is ironic since she was the one that figured out the trick. I also think Yuri looked really bad. But we do have a winner, and it is not Gray or Auntie. It is Pie. So cool. Good for Pie. Pie's was pretty good too. I mean, it might have been my third or fourth, probably third because I also liked Asia's, but Asia was just doing the same kind of makeup she always does. So yeah, I think Pie was a distant third for me. So congrats to Pie. But Pie does get to give out a curse. So the curse this week is called, oh, what is it called? Um, it is called Boulet blindness. And at first I was like, what does that mean? Are the boulets not able to see what the person's doing on the floor show? Because that would be kind of messed up. Um, but we do find out that that person will not be able to see anything while they're preparing for the floor show. So they do give the curse out to Gray, and Gray gets these cataract contact lenses and cannot see any details. Everything's just kind of fuzzy to them. Um, and if I was there in that room and I got this curse, I would be so screwed because I have tried to put in like those like colorful contact lenses once in my life and I could not. My eyelids like refused. They were like, "Nope, you're not putting that in there. Nope." Like it was physically impossible for me to put it in there. So if I had this, I'd be like, Sorry, I can't put them on. Like, give me a blindfold because I can't do this. I'm sorry." Yeah, I would have been really screwed. But Gray seems annoyed because this is Gray's second time in a row being cursed. Oh, Gray Matters cursed. Second time in a row being cursed. And I kind of get it. Like, it is annoying, but it's also another compliment. And Pie's like, you know what? I gave it to you because I think you'll be fine either way. You're so used to doing this kind of look, like special effects makeup, you don't even need to see. And Auntie's in like, then why did you curse Gray? Like, if it's not gonna make a difference, why not give it to somebody that's gonna make a difference? Auntie's just on one today. Like, you don't wanna get on Auntie's bad side, clearly, because she will let you have it. But Yeah, Pie just didn't really have a good defense. She's like, "I could have given it to you." And I think Auntie misunderstood because Auntie's like, "I would have given it to Asia then." I'm like, "Well, that's not how it works. If Pie curses you, you can't give it to Asia." So I don't know. um, but they do start. Yeah, Jaharia says she would have cursed Pie for claiming leadership. So here is where we get into the conversation. Now, Jaharia is making it known how she feels. Um, so they talk about it, and I think Pi is actually a little caught off guard that Jahari is bringing this up now. She's like, "Why didn't you bring this up before?" And we hear from Asia in the confessional that she actually does think that Pi was the leader of the group, which I didn't expect that, especially since Asia was the one like, "Oh, thanks for your choreography. That's what made us win." But now Asia's kind of backtracking in confessional and being like, actually, it was Pi. I mean, I get it. There's different aspects of leadership here, but yeah, I thought this was kind of interesting, and we're finally getting to see Jaharia like stand up for herself, and she's not doing it in like a nasty way, and I appreciated that. Actually, the Boulets said on their podcast this week, go listen to it if you haven't heard it, but they were like, when we started getting the edits of the confessionals and the episodes, we were so surprised by Jaharia, the personality behind her, because that is not what we saw like on the stage or in the lab. Like all of the stuff in the confessionals is like like a lot of extra personality, and that has been where she's stood out to me. So I kind of get that. And that might make sense with some comments that we get a little bit later on from somebody else. But anyway, we do see everybody starting to work on their looks for this week. And we're getting some insight on what a few of them have as far as concepts go. First, we see Asia. She's talking about how hers is like a monster that's part of a monarchy, where leaders don't care about the people. And I think her catchphrase that she keeps using is "Let them eat." Sh- I don't. I'm not. I don't cuss. I'm sorry. I'm lame. What am I doing covering Dragula if I can't even say that word, huh? I'm keeping it family friendly here since Dragula is such a family friendly show. Um, Jaharia is she wants to do something with daddies and bats and fur. I'm not sure if I get the daddy aspect later on, but we'll get into that. And then Pi wants to do a look inspired by the thing under the bed, using lots of ostrich feather, likes the way it moves, and I agree. Like you can't go wrong with ostrich feather. And then we see Gray is working on a stone guardian creature. Um, yeah, and this is where it was like just watching Gray. I was like, yeah, that makes my eyes hurt just watching them like do everything here. And Shirley, like, I'm really curious how this curse worked because like they have to see something, right? Like it's impossible to work and not see anything. So I don't know. But we do have some conversations. We see Aurora go up to Jaharia and they start complaining about pie. And Aurora is like, yeah, I I am on your side. Like I thought that was kind of messed up. We all agreed that there wasn't really a leader in the group. And so I'm like, okay, so it seems pretty split. Like we have two people that say, well, there wasn't a leader, but if there was, it was maybe Jaharia. And then we have other two people saying it was Pi. So I don't know. It seemed more Jaharia to me based on what I saw. Um, but Jaharia is also talking about how she's worried about not being the main character in this season. Um, to me, she is. Maybe she's not a main character, but she's very like she's not far behind most of the people in the cast. So I wouldn't worry about it. And then Auntie is talking to Pi and is testing the waters about whether there's interest in an alliance. Um, and the confessionals we get, like I don't know if any of you all watch Big Brother, but they give me so much like in Big Brother when we see the diary rooms, it is so clear that a lot of the lines that they're saying have been fed to them by a producer. Like, oh, how about you say it this way? Because it's just not a way people naturally talk. And I think that's probably my biggest issue with this season of Dragula, which I have liked this season quite a bit, is just people don't always feel natural. They feel like they are performing at times, especially in those confessionals. Um, so yeah, that's what I picked up during this conversation when they're talking about potential alliances and their canned lines in the confessionals. But yeah, it seems like Pi is just not so sure yet. Um, Especially because Auntie's making it pretty clear that she wants to target Asia, and that's Pie's number one at this point. So what a pickle for Pie, a pickled Pie who has two allies now that want each other out. So, what's a person to do? Um, yeah. And then we have the next day. Everybody's still getting ready. They go to their stations immediately. Gray finds out that Gray is near Asia and is like, "Oh, let me go over here. I don't want to be near either Asia or Pi." And I was like, "Okay, yes, be petty, Gray. I love it. I love it." Um, and then Yuri is talking about how she's worried because her look might have been too small. She says she tried it on and it busted. So she's had to start over and come up with something else. Um, yeah, and she thinks she might have gained some weight while on Dragula. Who knows? I'm really curious what the original look was going to be though, because spoiler, I don't hate what she did do. um, but yeah, I think that's about it. And then we get to where is it? It's about that time, right? I'm stalling while I find this clip. Here it is.
Attention competitors. Attention competitors. The floor show is about to begin. Attention competitors. Attention competitors. The floor show is about to begin.
You can tell I don't do this by myself very often. In fact, this is my first time doing it by myself. But yes, we do get ready for the floor show. We see the Boulets in these prosthetic masks, which I thought were pretty cool actually. Like it's very out of the box for them. They were like when they were talking, they were pretty muffled, but it's still like it still was worth it, I think. I could understand them enough. And then they do introduce our guests. So we have Mike Flanagan, who is very well known for like the Haunting of Hill House, I think, series. Like there's a bunch of like movies and series Mike Flanagan's made for like a lot for Netflix. And then of course Violet Chachki from RuPaul's Drag Race. So I thought this was a good panel. Everybody looks great. And then we get into the floor show. Um, I will just quickly show you. I'm going to talk about my detailed thoughts on the looks and give scores for the looks in Look Over Here, which will be coming out soon. But in the meantime, I want to just at least look at them here before we dive into the rest of the episode. So the floor show theme is monochrome monsters. And then we have Jaharia. We have Aurora. We have Yuri. We have Asia. There's Gray. And Auntie. And of course, Pi. So yeah, that was everybody. I thought it was a pretty good floor show. I definitely had some favorites. I don't know if I want to spoil too much. I will say I think the people who have been front runners throughout the season continued to solidify their front runner status. Um, and I don't know that I agreed with all of the judgment, but we do get some thoughts from the Boulets before we see the actual judgment. Um, Drac is talking about how she wasn't sure what Jaharia was supposed to be. It looked like a furry. Was she a moth? Now, Drac, you know she was not a moth. There is no world where she was a moth. I think you're just pretending so you can have that as a critique, but she was a bat. It was very clearly that very clear that Jaharia was a bat. They talk about Pi. They think Pi had a vision and delivered, even if it wasn't expected. And they talked a little bit about Pi on their podcast, where I think their concern was that Pi's monster was a little bit new feeling. It didn't have that old 1920s, 1930s vibe to it. So I think that's the only thing that kind of held Pi back. But Swan said that Pi would have been closer to their top, and Drac said Pi would have been closer to their bottom. And then Drac feels like a lot of the people this episode did not take their not so subtle hint that this should be about special effects makeup. And there were a few people that had masks on, so you could tell that not everybody picked up on the hint. I don't know that I did either. Like, I get it. Like a lot of the old Universal monsters, like that was essential to their looks. But I mean, you do have to don't be too vague. Like it was a little vague. Yeah, and Dreg talks about how at first when Gray came out, uh, she was like, "Wow, they sure were holding their hands so still. I don't know how they did it. They all this whole time without moving their hands." Uh, but then she eventually figured out that the wings were actually Gray's arms, and the two of them are just cracking up. Um, Actually, I think during this little segment where it's just the Boulets, I feel like this is the most I've liked them in quite a while because they seemed like they were having so much fun. Like they kept making each other laugh. And so I was just kind of living for all of their critiques here. Um, oh, they talk about Asia. Drac thinks Asia looked a little too modern, so this was another one. And then Swan disagrees and thought that it was fine within the boundaries of the rules. And then Drac does this. It's so petty. I love it. Drac says, "Okay, hold on," and pulls out their phone and just starts scrolling, and then proceeds to read the entire prompt they had for this challenge. Um, and the prompt did say to create a new classic monster. So Drac was focusing on the classic part of that. Swan's like, well, I'm focusing on the new part of that. I'm actually more like, I actually more agree with Drac, because like if that is the goal, like it is a new monster that would fit in the old times, right? So, yeah, I do think it probably should have been a character that would have worked under like old Universal monsters or Silent Era. That would have been cool. And honestly, as a kid, I used to I like to draw, so I would be in school and I would be drawing like my own made up monsters, and it was like me trying to create something that would fit in that world. So it's kind of funny that they had a challenge to do that. I love this challenge. Um, yeah, then we get some judging from everybody. For everybody, they all come out on the floor, and then pretty quickly, Pi is called safe. I will spoil my opinion on Pi. I don't think Pi should have been safe. For me, I don't think Pi hit the marks in what the theme of the challenge should be. Plus, I didn't really like the look that much. So for me, Pi would have been up for extermination for sure. Um, and then we have some back and forth between Violet and Asia, which I thought was cute because Violet was like, "Oh, I love everything you're doing," and Asia like gives out her name, gives out her Instagram handle, so Violet can follow her on Instagram. And Violet's like, "Okay, got it." And immediately, immediately when I saw this, I'm like, let me go check. Does she follow her? And I can confirm Violet Chachki follows Asia O'Hara, but not Asia Consent. So maybe that's changed in the past 24 hours, but she sure was not following her when the episode first dropped. um, and we find out that the extermination challenge this week is going to be the vacuum bed of death from season 4, which honestly, like, it seems pretty terrifying. Like, I can't breathe at all. It's sucking the air out of my lungs. This sounds awful. I would not want to do this. Like, I'm not cut out for Dragula because I couldn't handle any of these exterminations. Um, but they're changing it this year so that both competitors that are up for extermination will be in the vacuum seal at the same time. So I thought that's an interesting twist. Um, but we do get some results. So we do have our tops, which are Asia Consent, Anti Heroin, and Gray Matter. Um, Honestly, the 3 frontrunners, since before the season started, these were the 3 I was betting on to make it to the end. And I think they have really good momentum. Um, and we find out that our winner is Gray Matter, finally. Like, it feels long overdue for Gray to get a win. Gray's been doing for me, I think Gray's done well every single episode except maybe a hiccup with the Ghost Train episode. That was the only kind of low, and I didn't even think Gray was that bad in that episode. So I was very happy for Gray. But also, we have a bottom 3. The bottom 3 is Aurora Gosmic, Jaharia, and Yuri. And I was surprised Yuri was in the bottom because they mostly had like positive feedback for Yuri. So I thought it was going to be another case where we had a top 4, but no, they were the bottom 3. It seemed pretty clear to me that Yuri would be the one safe that was called safe, and sure enough, we do find out that Aurora and Jaharia are going to be the 2 that are up for extermination. Um, So immediately I'm like, okay, this is episode 6, and Aurora's been in the bottom 3, like half of the episodes so far. So I was like, this isn't looking good for Aurora. And this is the first time Jaharia is in the bottom. So they all go back to the cauldron and talk a bit. Jaharia says she'll step on Aurora if she has to. Like, okay, well, that's not the challenge, but I would like to see it. I think that'd be fun. Um, and Asia starts giving Aurora a pep talk. She says Aurora's one of the people she's gotten closest to, so she takes her off to the corner and is really hyping her up to do well in this challenge. Um, and Aurora tells Jaharia, she gets spicy. What is up? They always get so spicy with each other during these cauldron moments. I don't get it. Like, people are like, it's it's kind of like, it reminds me of the thing where people are like pitted against each other and they don't realize that there's somebody pulling the strings ahead of it, like somebody higher on, like in corporations. um, but, like, that's what happens every time after the judgment from the Boulets. Like, the Boulets put you there. Why are you all fighting each other? Like, it's not each other's fault that you're in the bottom. That's the Boulets' fault. But Aurora goes pretty hard on Jahara. It says, "Your personality is lacking." She's like, "It might sound like I'm saying you don't have a personality, and maybe I am." She says, "You're just not interesting." I'm like, yikes, Aurora, this is a little too spicy. And if you ask me, I think Jaharia has shown more personality this season than Aurora. Like, Aurora so far has only really shown a lot of personality when she's kind of forced in that situation, like with Scylla. But for the most part, I think she's been pretty low key. So I was like, pot kettle black, whatever the saying is. um, but yeah, Jaharia really doesn't like this. She's like, well, maybe that's my strategy to be quiet. Silent but deadly, which is funny because that's what I was calling my draft team. But that was Gray and Vivi, not you, Jaharia. I wish you were on my team, but you're not. Um, and Aurora brags about winning a challenge. She's like, well, I won a challenge, so I guess I should stay. Jaharia says, well, you didn't deserve that win. Now, Jaharia, I am on your side. I am on your side. So, but for me, Aurora, that's one of the few times this season where I'm like, oh yeah, definitely the Boulets got it right because Aurora killed the Ghost Train challenge. But it doesn't take long for Auntie to jump in and start trying to mediate the conversation like she always does. Asia's like, what? We did not sign up for this therapy with Auntie every week. Um, but it works because the two queens up for elimination quickly apologize to each other. Aurora apologizes and says, Jaharia, you do have personality. And Jaharia apologizes and says, yeah, well, you did deserve your win. So at least they're getting along now, but we do have to lose one of them. So they go in there for their extermination. Let me pull this back up. They go in there for their extermination. Suddenly, these ropes come down, like on top of them. But the funniest thing to me was like the ropes were just like scattered like throughout, but one of the ropes went right in Aurora's mouth, and she's just like that the whole time, like with this rope like going right through her mouth. Meanwhile, like Jaharia, it's like under her nose, but like it just looks so funny. Like Aurora's like, and then the plastic part comes down and starts vacuuming all the air out, and then you could see the rope was still in Aurora's mouth. But yeah, this whole time I was like, okay, if they both go through with it, if neither of them shows weakness in this, we have to go back to track record, right? And if we're going by track record, then Jaharia's got to win, right? And then we do find out that Aurora is being exterminated. Ooh, and we have complained about the actual exterminations, like the death scenes throughout the season, but this one wasn't too bad. We see Aurora walking around, and then she sees Swan, and Swan stabs her several times in the stomach. So she gets into a van and tries to drive off. The gate shuts, so she can't get out. She's panicking, and then suddenly a bag goes over her head. Swan, I think, was in the back seat and suffocated her. So not only did she get suffocated once, she got suffocated again. This time it was fatal. So we do lose Aurora. I'm sad because I do think she brought something different to the competition, especially since she's kind of known for her glamour. And I really appreciated that. Like, I think she showed it off very well. Was she always the best in the challenges? No, but I still liked what she brought. But do I think she was the right person to leave? I do. I would have been really sad if Jaharia left. So luckily, it did not come down to that. But we do have a draft update. I am trying to quickly find that. Okay. So what's interesting about this draft is there's 6 of us that drafted, and this is the 4th time in 6 episodes that a different person has been leading the draft. So in 6th place, we still have Brandon. 5th place, Brooke. 4th place is me. 3rd place is Eve. Oh, I forgot to bring up the draft update. Here we go. 3rd place is Eve. 2nd place is Jack. In 1st place, for the first time, is Logan. So congratulations to Logan. Logan has Asia and Yuri. So one of the only people that still has both people. So that's why Logan is winning. So congrats to Logan. But yes, I thought it was a really good episode. I'm excited to talk about the looks too. So please be sure to check out Look Over Here, where I will be diving into those. Yeah, let me know your thoughts because I'm really curious what everybody thought about this episode. If there was ever an episode where you leave a comment, this is the one. I would appreciate it. But yes, please, while you're here, go ahead and subscribe if you haven't. Like this video, share this video, leave comments. Also, If you are interested in just listening to the podcast version of these, you're welcome to do that. You can find any of the podcast links in the description below. Also, moving below, we've had social media links. It's really just my Twitter there, plus the Cups Twitter, and I have my Instagram right here, right there, right under my name. So if you want to follow me, you're welcome to. Also, if you want to get some merch, we do have cup mugs. We have cup mugs and a bunch of other things like socks, bottles, a bunch of things on our merch site, which is lanagcreations.etsy.com. So go ahead and get those, and yeah, I think it'll be worth it. But I am going to get out of here. So until next time, cheers.